am with the NVCOG. I'm a transportation planner. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
I'm Desiree Blanchard. I do communications for NVCOG.
I'm Tayo Olale. I'm also a transportation planner with NVCOG.
And we will be presenting tonight on this study we've been doing over the last few months for a trail along the Naugatuck River. A little rundown of what I'm going to be talking about today. We will do a quick introduction, project background, talk about the study process, the meat, which is the routing recommendations that we came up with, and then some of the next steps. So implementation strategies and public comment period. I'm going to start off like I always do with presentations like this and talk about what we are. What is NVCOG? We are the Naugatuck+Valley Council of Governments. It is a voluntary association of 19 municipalities. You can see on this map right here in Bristol is the far northeast corner of the region. It is the federally designated MPO or Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is a policy board for all urbanized areas over 50,000 people and the recipient of federal transportation planning money. And that policy board is made up of the municipal chief elected officials of all of these 19 towns. So that would be your mayors, first selectmen, et cetera. So here it would be Mayor Caggiano. And what do? We do transportation planning, of course, as well as other things like land use, environmental planning, GIS, and stuff like that.
Make sure that you're showing your slide.
Oh, 1 second. Here we go. Okay. And why are we doing this study? Because the city of Bristol asked us to. So we are supporting their efforts to create a transformative recreational space in the city, as well as an active transportation corridor. And this is also an economic development strategy. The goal of this project is to help revitalize the West End neighborhood. We want to be able to ensure a safe and accessible way for non-motorized users to travel. So that would be pedestrians, cyclists, people on scooters, anything like that. Also, we want to reconnect residents to the Naugatuck River. There's this beautiful natural asset here in Bristol that is pretty difficult to access for any kind of opportunity. So one of the goals of the study is to help reconnect residents to that. And finally, this study, along with some recently awarded design funds, which I will get to later, and I'm sure some of you might know about that, will put the city in a strong position to apply for grants for construction to get this thing actually built. And here is our study area. It is from the west in Rockwell Park, the first segment to Brockett Park there in the middle. And segment 2 is from Brockett Park to Route 229, mostly along Memorial Boulevard. And I'll get to this later, but there is technically a third segment that is not part of this study, but that will be for future studies. That will be from Route 229 to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail in Plainville. So here's some pictures of the project area. This is just southeast of Rockwell Park. That is the Naugatuck. It's pretty hard to see because of the tree cover. It's the same location, just 2 different angles. And as you can see, there's not really a connection to the river whatsoever right now. Here are some other pictures of the project area. The one on the left there, that is Brockett Park. And this is the far eastern end of the project area where Riverside Avenue meets Route 229. Some of the existing conditions, as I mentioned, there's kind of current limited pedestrian and bicycle, especially bicycle access in downtown Bristol right now. And over the last few years, there's been a whole slew of studies from the Route 229 study, which NVCOG did last year with the city, which looked at a north-south active transportation corridor and improvements in the city. I'm sure many of you know that as of last year, there is a bike lane on Memorial Boulevard now. The city has money from the Community Investment Fund for enhancing pedestrian safety, reducing traffic, and improving streetscape on Route 72 on Riverside Avenue and Park Street. And the currently under construction Connecticut Department of Transportation project at the intersection of Route 69 and 72 to improve that intersection, as well as this was at the city council meeting a few weeks ago. The Department of Transportation also has plans to realign Route 72 north of Rocket Park. So there is all of these projects that are planned or under construction that are kind of feeding into the broader vision of complete streets and transportation improvements in this corridor. Here is the recommendations from the Route 229 study that I mentioned, as well as the Department of Transportation plans. The one on the left, that is the Route 72 realignment. That they still have to do public engagement on it, but that is their preliminary suggested plan, as well as that is the under construction project at 69 and 72. And in terms of the project scope and the timeline, in early February of this year, we met with a project advisory committee, which was representatives from the city, from Public Works, Parks, Economic Development, as well as us as the staff from the COG. And that was a meeting to kind of set out the goals for the study and the broader vision before we brought it to the public, which we did in March with a first public meeting to get feedback on the initial goals that we set and further guide the direction of the study. And that was kind of the kickoff of some of our public engagement efforts, which it's kind of small, but in April, we held a walk audit of School Street in between West Street and Main Street. And that was a great opportunity to collect a lot of qualitative data. We did a survey and ongoing outreach, as well as data collection and identifying routing options. And we began to prepare some potential implementation strategies in April. And that brought us to today, which is our second public meeting, which opens the 30 days of public comment period before we send the final report to the city in about a month. So looking at some of the data, one of the key points that we looked at was crash data. And this corridor in general has a pretty low crash rate, which is great, especially in terms of pedestrian and bicyclist related crashes. From the last 3 years, there was only one pedestrian related crash, and that was actually on Park Street. So it's not even part of the corridor that we're looking at. And there have been no bicyclist related crashes. Kind of at the crux of this entire project was the public engagement effort, because this is a project for the city, for the residents. We want to know what the residents of Bristol wanted to see in terms of a transformative trail like this. So as I already mentioned, we held a public meeting here at the beginning of March. We held our walk audit. We attended a few meetings of the West End Association where we were able to share the project and get some feedback in that way. We had an online survey, about 5 questions, that was open for close to 2 months, I think. And we continually updated our website page and did some social media outreach during the time as well. Like I mentioned from our walk audits, we had a worksheet that participants got to fill out, provide some informal feedback on what they saw on the route and what kind of improvements they might like to see. So this is just a simple bar graph of some of the suggested improvements from the feedback from the walk audit. And the number one, as you can see, is protected bike lanes, but it ranged from everything from that to wider sidewalks and sidewalk repairs and decorative path features. And here are some of the sample survey results from our online survey. There were 89 responses, which is pretty great. And overall, there's been a lot of buy-in and excitement from the community so far. And we need that kind of investment and hype almost, because that's the kind of thing that will actually move this project forward instead of having it stall after it's designed and things like that. Now to the meat, I guess you could say, of the study. What did we suggest for the routing alternatives? I'm going to preface this with 2 things. Since this trail is going to be along the Pequabic River, it will require bridges, and we don't know yet in terms of routing, how many bridges it will require, we'll figure that out during design. But it will require at least one, potentially three, but we prepared all of our alternatives with the option to have 3 bridges because based on our feedback, people like bridges. They provide a recreational opportunity. People like crossing them, people like stopping on bridges, looking at the river, looking at the vista, as well as they provide the opportunity for things like fishing. But that can easily be modified because as we know, bridges are pretty expensive. So we left that open, and during design, that will be something that is ironed out in the future. And the second thing is we prepared all these alternatives with this project, the CTDOT project I was talking about earlier in mind, that has rerouted Route 72 north of Brackett Park. We don't know exactly how it's going to look like, but we kind of did our best to factor that into the alternatives that we have proposed. Starting with alternative A, which would be a multi-use trail along the Pequabic from Rockwell Park to Route 72. And then it would continue south of Brackett Park and then at North Main Street. And for the rest until down street, it would just continue as an on-street bike lane, unprotected, which is the graphic in the bottom left corner there. That's kind of a mock-up of how it would look. And then on the far eastern end, there's an existing utility easement along the river. So that would carry the trail from down street to Route 229. And then our second alternative, which is the one that we are suggesting, this is our preferred alternative. It's essentially the same, but the only difference is that, as you can see right there, there's a little bit of red. That would add in, instead of conventional on-street bike lanes, we would add protected bike lanes based on Federal Highway Administration guidance. Based on the volumes and speeds that are in that location, it falls into the dark blue area, which would mean a separated bike lane or a shared use path is what would be recommended for that. And we keep Memorial Boulevard as is because it falls into that lighter blue area, which would be a bike lane, which is what is currently there already. Now, we did one more alternative, I didn't put it in the presentation because we don't recommend it, but we looked at a completely on-street alternative. But like I said, based on the geometry of the streets, as well as the traffic volumes and speeds, we don't recommend a completely on-street alternative. In terms of next steps and looking at some of the implementation strategies, Governor Lamont was here last week and he announced the recreational trails grant for this trail. The city received $320,000 for design over the next few years, which is fantastic. So all that's left to kind of figure out will be construction. And it's kind of too early to tell for that, especially right now. There's a lot of state and federal funding programs to choose from that would be able to fund this. So that is something that we will work with the city to figure out over the next few years, especially as design is coming to a close. Another next step would be phase 3, like I already mentioned, which would be Route 229 to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail in Plainville. That's also something we'll try to work with the city over the next few years to do another routing study to figure out what that would look like, as well as the draft report. It will be available on our website towards the end of the week. It has all this information I presented, but it's far more detailed, especially in terms of the survey results, the recommendations, that kind of thing. And once we post that, we will open a 30-day public comment period where you will be able to submit any additional questions or comments. You can either email me directly or contact us at nvcogct.gov, and any comments that we receive in those 30 days, we will address in the final report. And language assistance is available in terms of public comments. And then by the end of June, we will submit the final report to the city. And that is all I have for this presentation tonight, but we are here to listen to any other public comment or questions you guys may have. So thank you.
So we're not talking about digging a tunnel out for personal, right?
No.
Stay.
Yeah.
Remember to restate the questions for those people on Zoom so they can hear. Both sides.
Okay.
So I have a question. What happens when you get to 229? It just ends right there at where no sidewalks and no, no place to go, right?
Well, the design for the trip, that is something we'll be figuring out during design. Route 229, like I showed here, that is right there.
Yeah. Have you been
Well,
there, yes?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, that is not part of this study. That's going to be the future study from 229 to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. So that was not really in the scope of this work.
I'm just wondering what you're gonna do when you, nobody's gonna start there. And
No.
nobody's gonna end there.
No,
so-
well, like I said, the goal is that this is going to connect to the wider region-wide network of trails. So eventually somebody's gonna be able to bike from Rockwell Park to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, and then they can go all the way to Northampton or New Haven or wherever. So it's kind of baby steps right now. Sure, it will be kind of a random dead end if this section of trail is built first, but in the long term, it's going to connect to something.
The part from Rockwell Park to West Street, is that primarily going to be along the Aquatic River?
That is the idea. That will be ironed out during design once again, but the idea that we received during a lot of our public engagement is that people want it to be as close to the river as possible. So in terms of our routing, that is what we propose.
So those houses that are on, between Park Street and the river, would you have to purchase part of their property to put a trail in there?
It is going to depend, like I mentioned, that kind of has to do with the bridge question. Exactly what side of the river the trail is going to be on will have to do with existing rights of ways, grades of the river over in that area. So it's kind of hard to say, but we anticipate that there will be fairly few takings.
Downstream of Jacob Street, there's a giant concrete wall, I think, on both sides.
Mhm.
How would you address something like that?
You know, I don't exactly know in terms of that. That is something that they would figure out during design.
Who does the design work?
So once the city gets, or the state authorizes the money for the grant that the city receives, then the city will do their standard procurement process to hire an engineering firm to do the design. And we'll kind of be, we won't really be a part of it, but we'll be keeping tabs on it for sure.
If you want to mute your computer,
Mhm.
I'm like mute my computer so that we can have people who are online able to speak at the same time and be heard.
Yeah.
Unmute, turn my sound. And that way I can also repeat questions so people can hear the questions.
I saw the initial.
That's my first one.
What will be the timeline? Additional route, they kind of all question there, so that if there's gonna be a dead end behind there,
Yeah.
and to me, it seemed like kind of awkward to put this into place and then say, oh, 10, 20 years from now, we'll definitely finish it.
Sure.
Is there some kind of timeline or schedule in place for to conceive it?
I anticipate it would be sooner than 10 years, especially
made that
if
number
there's, well, yeah. Especially if there's like I mentioned, the important thing is having buy-in from the community and this kind of investment. If that continues, I think it would be somewhat soon, but honestly, I can't say exactly for sure how soon that would occur. hopefully before the end of design of this segment that we've already routed.
How long is the?
There's a ton of money out there. Government has a lot of money, various programs to finance subsequent stages, subject to getting the funds, gets the award. Yes, awarded, wow.
Just said one follow up,
Yeah.
that 320,000
Mhm.
you talked about before, like what exactly is that going for? Is that something that we used almost or ground, or is this just?
It's the engineering behind it and also that requires public engagement too. So it's not construction, so there's no shovels on the ground for design.
When would this project be expected?
We anticipate, it's once again hard to say, especially since it's state money, we have to wait till the state authorizes the money, but we anticipate that design will be complete end of 2025, early 2026. And then during design, especially towards the end of design, the city would be able to start applying for construction. So say they applied for a grant, received a grant during design, they could have shovels in the ground as soon as design is finished. But we won't really know for sure.
Not that it's your purview, and the boulevard obviously would be the best spot, scenic, I imagine. But it's also the problem with businesses on Riverside Avenue, all the garbage seems to flow down into the river. And I've called so many times, been on watershed cleanups. It's a problem that just never seems to go away. These businesses
Yeah.
don't care, they're leaving the garbage from their dumpsters
Yeah.
right into the river.
Right.
It's sad, so.
Well, hopefully the idea of something like this is that it's something to have pride in, it's something to be kind of transformative. So if there is a facility like this, hopefully that would be a catalyst for some business owners to start, I guess, taking more pride in this kind of project.
Someone who's the trash or that a few times, shaking their head. It's definitely a problem on Riverside. I know some businesses are very good about keeping products. Really don't care, stuff's falling in the river. I like walking around on the boulevard. Veterans. It says trash river area. We would hope something like this would spur businesses to take more responsibility, but
Yeah,
if they're not doing it already, that'd be sad to do all this and then go for a bike ride. Crash.
There's one property owner in particular, Riverside restaurant, they had just first.
Are they the ones who own?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the couch.
That's
The notorious couch. There's a couch.
Yeah.
It's hanging up there.
Yeah, well, the liquor store, that's a good, they're having problems there too, with the Dollar General. Their dumpsters always overflowing, like the wind drives the stuff into the river, but that's a little bit upstream.
I guess the upside to having something like this is that it would bring more attention to that kind of thing. So maybe the city would be able to take care of it better.
Maybe they would.
Well, the city has also, got a big grant to, modernize Riverside Avenue and, do a streetscape there like we have on North Main Street.
Yep.
Hopefully then they're gonna put some more pressure on those
Yeah.
businesses to, spruce up and
Yeah.
clean up.
Exactly. This project's just one relatively small part of, like I mentioned earlier, like this broader vision to improve Bristol.
Not to belabor this too much, but we try having experience related projects. It's kind of a trash issue that it transform other communities.
Desiree, can you speak to that?
So you mean in terms of the trash issue that you're talking about with the businesses, if any of these trail projects?
So what I'm saying is to come in with this project, encourage people to they're better, to have effect on this. Yeah, Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely think that any type of trail system that gets implemented, any project like this that gets implemented has that kind of effect on the community. So having that ownership or that feeling of something that, as you said, that pride of something that's yours. So if you look at other trails in the region, you typically don't see, you know, the garbage, the litter, the blight around those communities. So you can only hope that when you have something nice that the community wants, that it's going to contribute to that type of communal feeling of making sure that, you know, you do what's right and you keep your community clean.
And not to say that this trail is gonna be exactly like the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, but that is a beautiful trail that is well maintained and has a lot of like great businesses along it. So that was kind of a model for what we wanted something like this to look like.
Yeah, and then we also got a comment that, you know, the commitment from the public works to keep the trail clean and well-maintained similarly will make a difference and definitely will create that sense to the community as well.
Well, I was looking at the protected bike lane,
Mhm.
a little more, and I'm thinking snow removal.
Yeah.
So how do you, yeah, is it, the bollards just flat when the plows go over them, but it's, how, you know, that's gotta be a consideration, because maintenance, I mean, if they just plow the snow into the bike lane, it's not much of a bike lane.
Exactly. During our PAC meeting, like I mentioned, that happened in February, Public Works expressed that they would potentially be interested in performing winter maintenance on this trail, because if it's gonna be transformative, once again, we have to be on top of all the small details. In terms of the actual technicalities of how that looks, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest.
Again, I'll emphasize, trails to nowhere are not attractive.
Yep.
From nowhere to nowhere are not used. I mean, they're just not used.
Yeah.
There's evidence of that in Plainville, right? There were bike lanes on either side of Route 10 for, you know, they went like here and stopped.
Yeah.
And they don't get the use that they could get if they were connected to things.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And so just jumping in,
Yeah.
for example, so with the Naugatuck River Greenway, which is one of the initiatives we're trying to push, and so that's going to be 44 plus miles interconnected throughout our region. One portion in Waterbury just got finished, phase 1. And although it is from nowhere to nowhere yet, we do see people using the trail. And I think that's just a testament to like the hope. And so, you know, fortunate for that city, they got funding to complete the next phase of the trail. And so, but the purpose and the point is that people do use it. And I think that seeing the use of the trail gives a little bit more of a push for, you know, your community, your city to actually go forward through with completing and connecting the pieces. And sorry,
No, you're
like Tayo said, there's a lot of money right now. So with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and a lot of money coming through, and how Governor Lamont just funded, you know, this design work to be completed. There's a lot of money accessible. And so I think if anything, it's like, now's the time to act, to really to push, and having community input and having the, you know, support for these things makes a difference.
And the unfortunate reality kind of is that most longer trails have to be built in segments like this.
Yeah.
But the idea is that this will get the ball rolling. We'll be like, oh, look at this. And then once this, hopefully the hype doesn't die for this. And then while this is in design, then we can do routing. And it will kind of snowball from there, hopefully.
It's always hard to public response, sure. If this were to be started, municipality of it, I kind of question if that'll continue.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be pessimistic.
no, absolutely.
The ball doesn't get rolling fast enough. It could just break apart back.
I think, yeah, that is something I think we're keenly aware of, because ideas like this have been kicking around as early as 2008. In the further report, if any of you read it, the background kind of goes into a lot of the existing plans, and projects like this have been, yeah, they've been shown up in a lot of different places. So hopefully the public engagement and the public is kind of the most important part. So if this is an important project for the community, then hopefully things will happen. And things evidently are happening with the grants and stuff, but like I said, hopefully that doesn't stop.
Currently, a lot of people walk on the boulevard and they use down street and they walk back up South Street. And they do loops, you know, they go up to the boulevard school, they go over to the World War II monument.
Yeah.
And they're always doing loops, considered somehow or another connecting at the end of 229 back some way, I don't know, back over to down street somewhere around to make it a more authentic kind of loop. People would engage, maybe use more often.
Yeah, you know, that's
Because
not,
it's used, have people use it a lot.
Yeah.
that is not something we considered. That is a great idea. That's something I will talk to this about.
Well, that's what the other thing I was thinking about was the external connections, right? So
Yeah.
North Main Street has this nice streetscape. You know, how do you connect to that? How does this interact? How does this
Yeah.
integrate with that?
Yeah.
So, you know, we have some things where people like to walk already, so. You know, if people could get on this and, you know, walk short loops or whatever.
Mhm.
They might be more apt to use it if there were connections north and, well, kind of say south, but it's south like that, so. It's straight up to the friggin' hill.
Yeah,
That's the expert.
That's, yeah.
That's my.
Forget that one.
One thing that chance to have a direct route to Rockland Park.
Yep.
Yeah, the opportunity. Build it. My opinion anyway, I don't know if that's expansive enough for bikers. So that's
No, but I mean, yeah, a connection to, you know, if they built some residential stuff in they're off of North Main Street and the vacant parts of what was left of the mall there.
It's a great idea, but used to get down past Park Street. There's no corridor there. It's just houses and apartments.
are you talking about like this part?
Yeah.
Well, like I said earlier, that,
Probably maybe, you know, from Jacobs Street South.
talking about Park Streets.
Yeah. Yeah, behind Park Street.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
There's a strip behind O'Connell, I don't know.
It's a small strip.
there is, and in that area too, there are already some houses coming down because of the current projects.
Right.
So this project, like I mentioned earlier, is not gonna have a huge effect. We anticipate, we don't know exactly for sure, especially because of the two condot projects in the area that will be doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Can't really squeeze the river any tighter there, because
It's pretty.
it gets tight, and
Yeah.
when you get some rain, it's almost gonna come out of the bank.
Yeah. Yeah, so that
It
is,
has come up,
right.
It has.
Exactly, and that's something,
Several times.
yeah,
How long will the stretch be from 229 to Rockwell?
how long will that stretch be?
Yes.
So like 2 mile all over 2
I think it's around
I
2
think
miles.
it's so from the west end, the 6972 corner, it's a mile to Crawford. That's a little bit farther if you're headed back.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. To be honest.
Follow up on, which is fine. how if there was a need to purchase property. This project. That's considering.
That, yeah, I mean, it's not something that's being considered at this stage, but that is something that could change the trajectory of the project.
Yeah, and so our transportation planning director said that ideally with the whole easement thing, we're hoping that there would be very little. Public Works has already engaged many of the property owners and the city has easements in place already.
It wouldn't be a terrible time to have space here from away from the. Well. But no, but getting, so nobody parks a dumpster next. Perfect.
So clear just enough for a trail, but not enough.
Well, they have to put the dumpster on the trail, I think somebody does.
There's some guys who buy it.
This wasn't here the last, who would be responsible for maintaining this trail? Is it the department, works?
It'd be Public Works, yeah. I mean, if there was a community organization that wanted to make some kind of contract with Public Works, sure, that could be possible, but it would be Public Works.
Well, I mean, it depends on what kind of maintenance you're talking about. Like the canal trail doesn't get plowed, right? So it must just. Yeah, it's just basically, or whatever, but it's waiting for it to melt.
Yeah, it's pretty much up to each town to determine
Yeah.
their maintenance.
Well, the other trails.
Yeah. And that's something we talked about. I think it's on one of these slides. In the past, let's see. Yeah, and that one on the left, you can see
Winter
which quality you'd like to see on the trail, winter maintenance. It got kind of a, I won't say lukewarm because this is not entirely representative, but compared to things like trash cans and lighting, it's not as high of a priority.
Would it just because less demand?
Less use, it can be expensive. Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. They would prioritize roads, of course, before the trail.
Always pretty bottom of the list.
In reality, with each passing year, worrying about plowable snow is probably
Yeah.
not that big of a deal.
Bristol used to have plows for the sidewalks, so
Yeah.
they had basically a 4-foot wide
Mhm.
plow that they would drive down certain sidewalks.
It's still there, they do it down South Street.
Yeah. But I mean, if you want kids to be able to walk on it, get to school and stuff.
But the trail from like Collinsville into Unionville in the winter, when there is snow, a lot of people cross country stay on that.
Right.
Heck, I see people with fat tire bikes.
Yeah.
So, if there's a service, people.
Yeah, ultimately, that's something that the city will probably decide on.
So the money that's already been approved, when is that? It just that has to be processed.
Yes. It's hard to say. Once again, we think maybe January, potentially as soon as October, so probably late this year, early next year.
They have to go with on commission. No.
I don't think so.
No.
Thank you. You guys are the most important part, honestly. Community feedback is really crucial to this kind of work.
Just hurry up because if it doesn't come soon, I'll have to get a pass from Concare to be able to do it.
I'm with you. For this project. This is technically the last public meeting, so, I think design, there'll be some public engagement during design, and we can keep you posted on that. That will be through the city, but, yeah.
But the public
Okay,
comment
that's
period
kind of
for the
my
report is
comment.
open. The public comment period for the report is open, so, you know, as much feedback that was given today, I think it's really beneficial to articulate that in writing, so that it can contribute to when the final report actually goes to the city. And we'll send that out too.
Nice to meet you.